What's up, DBS fans, horror fans, and anyone trying to make a movie? We are back and we have a great one today because you have heard me talk about it before. Set design is the key to making a really good indie film. If you get focused just on the set design, you will have a lot of success. If you watch a lot of our old movies, you'll see they're in these really nice Airbnbs and they're supposed to be haunted. And it doesn't come off as creepy. It looks a little cheesy. And guess what, guys? I see it in a ton of indie films. What really separates films from me now is atmosphere. If you watch Good Boy, go watch the atmosphere they were able to create because they did such a good job. And a lot of that was set design. So today, I'm really excited to bring on Mars, who I just met recently. If you guys have watched Dead Men, the short, which has, I believe, over 10,000 views on our YouTube channel, she was the mastermind behind the set design in that one. Mars, thanks so much for joining us tonight. Let's first start with your background. Tell us a little about Mars, how you got to this point, and before you shot Dead Men.
Hi, Brendan. Hi, everyone watching. I'm Mars, and it's a pleasure to be here. All right, so about my background. First things first, I'm from Brazil. I was born in Brazil. I was raised there 18 years of my life. I went to college there, everything. And then, twist of fate happened, and I got an opportunity to come study film in Florida. I went to Full Sail, and I had an amazing learning journey there. But I feel like the biggest difference between my time there and other people's time there was that when I got there, I already knew I wanted to be a production designer. And most kids don't even know what a production designer is when they get into film school.
We're big fans of Full Sail here at DBS. My publishing company has a lot of Full Sail graduates. Our editor's a Full Sail graduate. Dylan went to Full Sail for a little bit of time, but our paths have crossed a lot. Tell us a little bit, what made you want to become a production designer? What made you know that this is what you wanted to do, when you came to Florida and went to Full Sail?
Okay, so when I studied graphic design in Brazil, I had to do a visual novel. And as it was a very difficult period in my life, and that visual novel really helped me get through it. And a professor I had at the time said that I had cinematic framing, and I thought that was really funny. So I feel like I don't know why, but I feel like that was the inception. Anyway, at the end of that, graphic design degree, you're supposed to do a thesis, and our thesis was to explore the uses of graphic design besides being a graphic designer. And I've been involved in a lot of different kinds of art throughout my life. I was a stage actress. I paint, I draw, I sing, I dance. I love art in all its forms. And I've always wanted to find a way to integrate everything. But my craft has always been visual art. That's always been what, gets me going, that I need to do with my hands on my day-to-day, or my life doesn't make sense. And my thesis was about production design. I discovered the field of production design, and I was like, oh my God, I get to literally create the world that this movie happens. It doesn't exist without me there. And I don't know, maybe that just tickled a little bit of a God complex in me. And I thought it was a really cool way to just explore everything that I love. And around the time that I finished my thesis was when my little twist of fate happened, and my family offered me this opportunity, and I was just like, "Kismet."
So when you're looking at production design, obviously you're watching movies. Which directors or which production designers kind of caught your eye? Which ones were your favorites?
All right. I knew you were going to ask me that, and I am terrible with names, so I made sure to get my names right. So if we're talking in sense of directors, that's pretty easy. My favorite ever, Wes Anderson. I am in love with every single thing he's ever done. And then Guillermo del Toro and Tim Burton. Tim Burton was actually, he worked in art department. He was an art director. He did not start as a director. He became one, which I think is very interesting. And as for production designers specifically, fun fact, Wes Anderson only works with one production designer, and that is the great Adam Stockhausen. And his work is just magnificent. It's just absolutely magnificent. The symmetry, the colors, the perspective, it's almost mathematical in how artistic it is. Production designer that I've been really interested in lately is Tamara Deverell. She's worked with Guillermo del Toro in a bunch of different things, most recently in Frankenstein. She also did Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities on Netflix and like a bunch of his other recent things. She is really good. The way they choose to use colors in that movie, and especially the axis of the red and the green, which is one of my favorites and one that I had to explore in Deadman as well. So that one felt very familiar.
I definitely think that set design really enhances the movie. For us on the indie level, it is just, can we get that, that creepy feel because we're doing a lot of horror movies? Can we get that atmosphere? But really my job, at the simplest, the Occam's razor is, how do we take our $25,000 budget and how do we make it $1 million? And that is the biggest question, the hardest thing for me, because even if you have the best cameras, if your location is not very good, you can have the best sound. If your location is not very good, it's just difficult. And some of these, like mansions and haunted jails and stuff like that can run $100,000 for, the 10-day shoot. So that's the first step. And I think this is where we're at, is just to try to make our stuff, use what we have and use it to the best of our abilities. But what she's talking about, which is, what I hope to get to someday, is to enhance the visual elements of the story, really bring it out and, tell that story, build that world, and enhance everything they're doing through set design. So everything from your sound design to your cinematography to your set design, all kind of work in harmony. And that's when I think you get something really, really cool. Unfortunately, I don't see a lot of that stuff these days. I haven't seen Frankenstein, but a lot of movies to me just kind of lost that touch a little bit. If you go back, I'm a big fan of Del Toro in, his earlier stuff, and it was gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous stuff. Was it Pan's Labyrinth was absolutely incredible. I'm also a big fan, just to bring something else up, of what was the movie? Just a Labyrinth with David Bowie.
Oh yeah.
Fantastic movie with awesome stuff. I don't feel like we really Never Ending Story is another fantastic one.
Never Ending Story was actually one of my favorites growing up. I still have the VHS tape that I used to watch it on.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like
so good.
I don't see that stuff anymore, and you kind of lose a little bit of immersion. I'm not a big fan of CGI as well, but to me, it's so important. So if we ever get a huge budget, this is the first thing that we're obviously going to go to. So you have some great recommendations. Obviously, did your work, your studying. So you get to Full Sail. Talk to me a little bit about like some of the projects that you were on, or how did they kind of, take your study and kind of put it into practice?
Okay. So first thing I'm going to say about not just Full Sail, but honestly, probably most other film schools, they're not going to make a production designer, because the art department, it differs greatly from camera, lights, everything else, because you need skills that are not inherently filmmaking. You need to know how to draw. You need to know basics of architecture. You need to know interior design. You need to know art history. You need to know color history. You need to know time periods of different furniture, because that is how the world is built. You need to be able to look at a building and say, this is brutalist construction. This would never exist in the 1800s. And those are skills that you're not going to learn in film school. You're not. Film school is not going to make a production designer. This is no criticism, Full Sail. We have art department teachers. We have a beautiful mill. We have fantastic, sound stages that we've built beautiful sets on. The back lot is immaculate. So we have all that support for the art department. It's just no film school is going to make you a production designer. That it has to, it's something that is from passion of other areas that ends up culminating into art department and film, or at least in my experience studying about other production designers and meeting other production designers, we end up kind of falling into film instead of gravitating specifically towards film because of all these transferable skills that you need. Which in my opinion is one of the most special things about production design in film is there's so much that goes into it. You have to be so aware of every detail because everything has a reason for being there at that time in that place.
I would say the devil's in the details. And that's something that, we always stress, and you'll hear me say it on set a lot. It's just like, we want to move fast, but if you see something, say something, because, it's not just about continuity and stuff, but if there's something that could just make something much better for, 10 seconds or a minute or something, we will do that to try and make it better. We've gotten a little bit better at that.
I like to call it measure twice, cut once.
That's pretty much what it is. But I think just to go back to your point, I think what you said is my advice with a lot of, film schools, just in general. I get the question a lot of emails are, should I go to film school or should I start making stuff myself? My advice with film school is you're going to get what you put into it, right? And there's a lot of people who go to film school and they think it's just going to magically open doors and do a lot of stuff for them. And that's not necessarily the case. You really have to go in there. You have to network. You have to work really hard. You have to hone your craft. You have to build things. And I think that, you will succeed because it gives you, what it does is it gives you resources. Mars probably had a lot of resources,
exactly,
a lot of stuff to play around with, but you have to put in the work. And I think that's just the whole thing. It's like anything in life, but it's also just in filmmaking. If you're not making films, you're not going to get discovered. There's just, you have to put stuff out there. With each movie we make, it opens more doors, it opens more opportunities. And
no one's going to find you in your house.
Yeah. More people. I met Mars through, because, they made a short and they made it with Ben, who's a fantastic actor, and, they connected, and, now we're probably going to do some work with probably Full Sail together. So it's cool how all this works, but it's all because she made something. You made something. You have to do the work. You sit here and say you're a writer, but if you're not writing, are you really writing?
What are you doing?
So,
exactly.
You have to be playing the game. And that's pretty much it. So it's like, the school will give you the resources, but you still have to do, you got to put it
exactly.
No,
I like
nobody
to say
work out, but
I like to say that you go to film school for the toys and for the friends, because the lectures you could get online if you wanted them, and then it's what you do with those toys and those friends that will maybe get you somewhere. Had an instructor at Full Sail, great guy, Larry Katz. And he liked to say that having perfect attendance, straight A's, and doing extra work on sets is the bare minimum you can do if you ever want to be anyone in the film industry. And I was like, yeah, makes sense. This is one of the most competitive, selective industries in the world. Everyone wants to do this. Like, everyone wants to do it until they see that you have to get down to it. Yeah, there are a lot of, overnights. There are a lot of putting your hands literally in the dirt. There's a lot of sweating outside and freezing inside, freezing outside and sweating inside as well. There's just a lot of nitty gritty that people don't want to do.
Yeah. You don't, it's a tough industry for sure. We've been through it. We've shot in the woods. We've shot in the hot. We've shot in the cold. We've shot 18-hour days. Let's talk a little bit about, getting the opportunity to play around with these toys. Tell me a little bit about when you built the set on the morgue, which was one of the projects you were involved with.
So morgue was my final project at Full Sail for a class that we call APN. It's advanced production. And it was a really interesting process because obviously they don't give you a huge budget and they don't give you a lot of time either. All the classes at Full Sail only last 1 month. So you have 1 month to make the short, start to finish. Well, to shoot it. The editing classes after that. But, to shoot it, to do the production, you have 1 month start to finish. So my job is that time. And it was definitely one of the coolest things I've ever done. So my set for that one, my biggest job was to build this morgue where we were going to have, most of our important scenes in there. All of our stunts were going to be in there. And we spent most of our film in there. It was titled Morgue. But the thing is, I couldn't use actual metal, and I couldn't just buy all the props. We didn't have time. We didn't have the money. We didn't just have them in our prop room. So I had to figure it out. It was a lot of like finding ways to movie magic our way out of things. So the tiles on the walls are not actually tiles. They're like these flats that have texture on top of them. Not quite peel and stick. They're more made for film than for actual decoration. If you see them in person, they're so obvious. But through the camera, they look great. And the metal is all peel and stick over wood. Just painted the floor with some just random paint, and it looks like, concrete or whatever. Shine it a little bit, and it's gorgeous. The stretchers where they're laying there, they are literally just wooden work tables from the mill that I put a thing of peel and stick around, and that's it. Called it a day. You throw some blood everywhere, make the colors correct, and you need some very cool toned, like clinical colors. So I ended up using this like minty kind of green aqua color that was, you want to create that effect of it being unsettling. And that's what I was going for. That we definitely achieved it. I'm very proud of it till this day. It was really hard to do the little like, it was hard to do those the freezer doors where they put the corpses in and out. We couldn't get a functional one, of course, so I had to cheat all of those. A lot of math and making them very equal to go with the perspective of the angle of the room we were going to use, because we weren't going to go around the entire room. Everything had to be seen from this wide where we would cut into. So there's also that when you're doing production design. You have to think in the 360. There must always be something to look at. No matter where you point your camera, you need to have something to look at. One of the tests I like to do is I pull out my phone and I just start going around to see if I can find at least a dozen frames in every angle. But yeah, so when you're building something and you're designing, you have to think about that. Where is my frame? Where am I looking from? And that's where you start working with the other departments. You go talk to the DP. Hey, what's your blocking like? Where are we putting this camera? Where the actor is going to be over here? Are there any corners in this room that you specifically need, like, to look at? Like, I'm going to look at that wall, or maybe that wall won't be seen at all. So that is also another thing, because it has happened. I dressed the side of the room. Gorgeous. Didn't even show on camera. We never even looked there. And yeah.
Talk me through, when you first met with the director, and obviously your job is to, get his vision into something, like create his world. How did that work out? Talk to me how you worked out with him, because again, like Full Sail, that would be like his like thesis project, right? Would be like this directing this, so it's like new people, everyone's kind of trying to get this project done. How did you work with him, on creating his vision?
Well, I was very lucky that first he was a really nice guy called Jacob Entz, really talented, really nice. My crew was honestly amazing. I had a fantastic graduating class with me. So I definitely lucked out on that, especially because it was on tail end of the pandemic. But I think, well, of course, I read the script. I did a little bit of breakdown. Script breakdowns, very important for our department. So I did a breakdown, wrote some notes, and then I sat with him and I started asking him about when he closed his eyes when he was envisioning this, what did he see? It's kind of, if you ever watch Criminal Minds, they have the cognitive interview thing. It's kind of like that. I asked him to just guide me through the room. Tell me what it looks like. What color is the wall? What color is the floor? Is there a texture? Is it cold? Is it drafty? Is it hot in there? What side does the sun comes from? Because that tells me so much of what I need to know. And after that, we just discuss some comparables so I can get an actual like visual style. Because and I always go to the comparables because a lot of times not just directors, but people who are not in the art world exactly, like visual arts, they don't really know how to tell you what they're going for. Sometimes it's through no fault of their own. It's through no fault of anybody. It's just they don't have to know that. I have to know that. And it's my job to make sure that I'm getting the information out of them properly. So I try to explore different avenues for them to show me this visual language that they have in here, that it's my job to bring to out here.
No, I think that's a great point. You guys have heard me talk about this before, where the number one job, outside of trying to make everything look like $1 million, for my communication, working with actors, working with everything, my job is to take what's in my head, the vision I have in my head, and give it to everyone as quickly as I possibly can and as accurate as I possibly can. I've seen a lot of directors where they struggle with both. It just takes a long time to get that out. And when you're shooting, a movie, you have to block people, you have to make sure you're getting a good performance, and you have to move on. Especially us, we shoot in 9 days. Everything has to be really fast. If I'm sitting there trying to have communication breakdowns and everything, the movie's not going to get made. I think it happens to a lot of indie sets. I think that's why they go over budget over time, because it's just, they struggle with getting that vision that they have out to their, not only just their cast, your crew, everybody that's going to be on that production. And one way we do that here is pre-production. Everything we do so much.
The devil is in pre-pro.
Yeah, and making sure like we're about to enter pre-production probably next week actually we've been in pre-production for the last couple of weeks on a movie we're shooting in January. So we get about 8 weeks of solid pre-production of 1 to 2 meetings, extensive meetings each week, just to get this thing where it needs to go. Anything that I'm struggling to get my vision out to the actors can get resolved in pre-production because we have time. The minute you step on set, you have that time pressure pushing down on you, and things get really, really difficult. Everyone's like a little bit more stressed. So with pre-production, that fixes a lot of that stuff. But again, it's how do I get on the same page with the actors as quickly as possible? And you have good, better, and best. Good is just having a really good script that you can kind of break down and both understand. Better is if you have pictures and visuals and a mood board, and, you could show them stuff of wardrobe and, storyboards, like another one that's really good. Best is if you have actual visual shots from movies to give them. And I'm not saying you have to steal or copy things, but I'm like, hey, I really like how they did this, or this is how we're going to do the fight scene. Or I send them clips of all the other movies that I've done before. I'm like, these pop scares work. The actors, we work with a lot of people who don't even watch horror movies. They don't know what pop scares are. So I have to send them like how it's done. And I show them behind the scenes of how we break down fight scenes, because everyone's a little bit nervous about like fight scenes on indie set. And I'm like, don't worry. We do it piece by piece, get them comfortable, but just try to give as much visual stuff, because filmmaking is visual. Give that as much as you possibly can. And that works really well for us. So it's a combination of pre-production and just giving them a ton of visual stuff. Whenever we have a movie, the first onboarding sequence is I'll give them 20 or 25 movies to watch. And that is recommended watching. There'll probably be about 4 or 5 in there that they actually have to watch. We'll have a mood board. I don't believe in storyboarding for various reasons I've been through before, but I will give them much visual stuff as possible moving forward. Again, it's just the goal is to get what's in my head out to the cast and crew as quickly as possible, so we're all on the same page. So I thought that was really relevant. That's really, really cool. So, that was your Full Sail experience. Tell me about when you went to Atlanta to basically work on a set for, I guess, outside a Full Sail production for the first time. Tell me a little bit about that and how that went.
Okay, so Atlanta was actually right after we finished shooting Dead Men. Bowen and I moved together out of Orlando to Atlanta, a month after the end of shoot. So we get to Atlanta, we're there for a couple months, we find this, and we get on all the Facebook groups, and, that's the real life of being a filmmaker. Good luck, find a job, yay, go ahead. You don't know anybody. Everything that you thought you knew, wrong. Through the Facebook groups, I found this job posting, and they were looking for some art PAs, and I was like, all right, cool, at least I'm still in art department. Steps back, as I knew that I would have to take because you work from ground up. But all right, cool, let's do it. So I started getting familiar with the project, and a couple days later, after they hire me, they let me know that their art director dropped out and they needed someone to work with their production designer as the art director. Obviously, jumped on it. Um, and I had no clue what the script was about. I had read it several times, but I couldn't understand the story, the character arcs. It was just, it was very confusing. I honestly, I wasn't seeing the vision. I really wasn't. But I was like, man, you got to work with what you got. Beggars can't be choosers. Let's do this. So I get there, and the set is gorgeous. It's just gorgeous. You have this, 20-foot long tunnel that looks like it is made of stone. And then there's the sconces that I made for them, and we put those sconces into the wall, and it's actual fire. And eventually, during that shoot, we made blood rain down those walls. And you had a few other parts of different sets. We had, what was it, 3 different like parts of this whole castle that we were shooting in? Yeah, something like that. But it was, once I saw the set and I saw the actors in it, everything made sense. It all fell into place, and I was like, okay, now I get it. And it was one of those moments that really reaffirmed to me the importance of the visual storytelling that happens. You know that you don't have solid art department in a film because the entire film is 2 people yelling at each other in an empty room. It's there's nothing there. There's nothing to look at. Who are these people? Why are they fighting? We can't tell. And there are only so many angles you can do. There's 2 over the shoulders, there's side one, a few close-ups. That gets boring really fast. You need B-roll. You need background. And the background can tell you a lot about what's happening and who these people are. So it was one of those moments of looking at this set that finally made me understand the entire story of a script that I had read at least a dozen times. It's very interesting. Over there, I met my mentor that guided me through the entire year that I worked in Atlanta, in which I learned so much.
I've seen a lot of things like that where the actors, they're in the movie and they don't even know what the movie's about. And it's like you kind of have to just trust that stuff. To me, that's kind of a red flag because, again, I am like, my whole goal is to make sure everybody is on the same page. Everything that we're trying to do is to, move the movie forward, and we all have to be on the same page. We don't really have time for discussion. So that's always interesting. But again, like, these are multi-million-dollar films, and these films have the opportunity to shoot things differently. They can shoot whole segments of a film that they may never use just to trick the actor to have a different ending, or so they don't spoil stuff. Here at, Indie Land, we don't get any of that. We have to work with what we have, and we have to go forward. So that's really cool. But let's get to the one I really want to talk about, which is Dead Men, which you guys, if you haven't seen it, check it out on our YouTube channel. Absolutely blew up. 10,000 people viewed. There's a ton of people talking about it, commenting on it. And honestly, like, when we had agreed to put it on the channel, I had no idea what's going on. I put up a short that we had done a while back. It got like 70 views. So I'm like, hey, if we get to 100, like, that's a win. Like, I was telling Bill, I was like, just 100 is like really, really good. It blew up. It did really, really well. It's inspired me to really make a zombie movie. I was hanging out with Bo and Mars last Saturday, and we were just talking about zombie movies the entire time because I thought you really needed a really big budget to do it, and they did it very limited scope, and it looked really, really good. So go check that out. But one of the reasons when I was watching that, because I'm always looking at like, all right, what did they do really well? What, did they need to improve on? Is there anything in there that I could learn from, as a director myself? And I went in there, and the set design was fantastic. And I was like, whoa, like, immediately it stood out. And you can hear me talk about it. I did a podcast with Bo. And I was like, how did you do this? Because it looked, professional down to the T. So Mars, please enlighten us how you made this, and I believe this was your apartment. Um, how you made it look like this, because it looked absolutely incredible.
Well, um, it was actually Beau's apartment. We were dating at the time, so it was kind of my apartment. I lived across the street. But yeah, no, first of all, you and Beau are just always so nice when you're talking about me. Warms my heart. And Beau and I also were not expecting the reaction that we had to Deadman. We were also like, if we get to 100 views, it's gonna be great. 1,000? Out of this world. And we just kept seeing it go up and up. And we were like, is this real? Is this really happening? So it was really insane. I'm very happy, that we had that we have the short on the channel and that, we met you guys and super excited. So I just needed to say that one first. All right, Deadman. Yeah, so it was Bill's apartment, which actually helped a lot in my process because so there when you're making art, when you're making things, you have three things that you want. You want it fast, you want it good, and you want it cheap. You can't have all three ever. You just can't. We needed cheap, we had time, and we wanted it good. So what happened was throughout the course of a month, maybe two, I spent every hour that I wasn't busy working or finishing university dressing that set, applying that wallpaper, shading the corners of the walls, and going to different weird little stores on the weekend to find knickknacks and saving pizza boxes, cleaning those pizza boxes and saving them and storing them so I could use that, and having all of our friends do that as well. It was a process that took a very long time because we wanted it to be really good. So we looked at the resources we had, and we had a lot of time. We could choose when to do this. It was our money, it was our location. There were no deadlines, nothing. So we used the best resource we had at that moment, just time, to invest in making something cheap and good. Because good will get you there. Cheap will get it done. Good will get you seen.
I like that. I like that analogy. That's actually really cool. I mean, that is pretty much everything that we have, when you're making a film. I'm actually going to use that from now on. That's actually really fun. So, you sit down with Beau. Talk to me a little bit about, how you guys came up with that idea. Like, what was the vision? How did you come up with the concept of what you wanted the interior of the apartment to look like? And then what was the steps on, starting to make that happen?
Okay, so Beau, he is I have never worked with you, but from what I gather from you, he is very different from your approach. Beau is very meticulous. He's very detail oriented, which is it's a blessing and a curse. You know, I can work with him very well. We can just communicate very bluntly on things. He will tell me something and I'm like, no, I think that's a terrible idea. And we'll just, keep going on that. He doesn't really take it personally, which is something great about him as a person. But it also makes him pretty easy to work with in my case. I prefer to save time and not mince my words when possible. Um, but we sit down and Beau tells me the story. He reads me the script and I can see it. But I was like, all right, so you told me that they're drug dealers. What kind of drug dealers? He was like, what do you mean, what kind of drug dealers? And I was like, are they like big shot drug dealers? Like, what's their story? And I was like, the story that I'm hearing when you're telling me this is these guys, they were like nobodies, right? And then they just started selling, and now they have so much money that they really want to make this place look nice. They just don't know how. And they trash it because they don't know how to take care of it. But they tried. They really tried to go for some things that they thought would look good. And it just failed. And he was like, why do you need to know the story of how they decorated their apartment? And I was like, because it's my job to decorate it as if they had it. It's their home. This place is not just a set. It's not just a spot where they get killed. This is where they live, where they hang out with their friends. And so Bo and I went through this whole character deconstruction of, who lives here, who visits this place, who's here all the time, why here. And then we started talking about the colors, which is one of my favorite things to talk about. And it was our first big fight in the production. I think it was our biggest fight in the entire production. It was also one of our first fights dating in our relationship. Yeah, the argument about the colors was specifically about the room, because he wanted it to look very gritty, and he was thinking a color palette that was very cool toned. And I was like, that's not gonna really work if you want this blood to pop. And we got through a moment in which I had to sit him down and explain, look. You want my help, right? Let me help you. Let me give you my expertise. I'm not saying you don't know what you're looking for. I'm saying you don't know how to say. So, I understand the contrast you're trying to create. But consider this. Blue and red are not opposed. They don't bring each other out like that. Now, red and green does. Green does that. And also, consider the psychology of the colors, because color theory also involves psychology. Green is an unsettling color. We associate green with disgust. We associate it with repulsion. Also yellow. Yellow and green, depending on the hues, shades. We associate it with that. And green, very conveniently, is the opposing color to red, which brings it out very, very well. I told Bo, we need a green yellowish base, and then we're going to splatter some brown, black, and red on it. That's what we're going to do. But the red is going to be the only vivid thing in this room. Everything else, we're going to find shades that are kind of faded, unsaturated, and kind of gross looking, kind of old looking. And everything that's too bright, I'm going to fade. Anything that is too new looking, I'm going to get it dirty and gross. And I did. We bought brand new things and I destroyed them. All in name of the color.
Yeah, and I thought you brought up something really good there. As far as like going through the history of the set. And this is something that I do with actors where, some actors are a little bit different, but I always start with them from birth. All the actors and the characters, we go all the way back to birth. And this is once again in pre-production. And I used to be like, why do I need to do this? This is kind of a waste of time. But I'll tell you what, it works. And I really advise all you guys to do this. Go with that character. What did they do growing up? What was their family like? Mother and father. What was their income level in there? Because all that stuff, especially in the younger years, can shape their characters later on. They can always go back to that stuff, especially if there's trauma. We do horror, which is just a mask for trauma. Going and doing that with a set is awesome. I'm like, that would be so cool to do, to be like, whose place is this? Why is it like this? Is it clean? Is it dirty? What do they need to go in there? That would be like the next step for us. Obviously we just haven't been able to, number one, afford that. And number two, just have that opportunity. But to me, that's the pre-production, if you guys are wondering, that we do with the actors. All the characters, every single character, even the small ones, we start from birth and we go all the way, through to where they are in that movie. And then we even do, their goals. Like I'll sit down, we have a whole meeting on, past, present, and future, that goals for the character, where did they come from? Where are they now? Where are they going to go? And I create a whole template of questions that I ask, similar to what Mars is saying right now, where she's trying to get what kind of drug dealers are they? I will have a template of 50, 60 questions that I ask the actor, and I don't give them anything. Don't let them talk. Just sit there and let them talk, because if they're not answering correctly, there's an issue with either my vision or my script. And this is something you just have to do in pre-production. The more you do it, the better. So I thought that was really, really cool. They kind of brought that up. So let's talk a little bit about like the walls and how what you actually did to kind of craft this kind of stuff to get it to look like that. Like it felt to me, and it's hard for me to describe this, but it felt like I could feel like the heat and the humidity and the swamp in there. It was like very like this place, and I think it was like the sound effects of the flies you guys had in there as well. But it's like this place stunk. I could smell this place by just looking at it. So how did you pull that off? Because there was like I think it was like peeling wallpaper and there's all kinds of stuff you had in there. Talk to me a little bit about that because it felt like a 100-degree day in Florida. There's no AC in there. There's dead bodies. The fridge is open. If you guys have never been out, like a loss of power in Florida is like the worst thing ever. It'll be like 100 degrees and you're trying to sleep and everything's just sweaty. It just felt like, oh, it's just like, I can't even, it felt hot. It felt sweaty. It felt gross, which I feel like is what you're going for.
It was, and I'm gonna tell you, I achieved that mostly through yellow and green. That was the basis of it all, just yellow and green. Color psychology is really, really interesting. I also I also color corrected the film. So there's that. I made the color palette. When you're making a color palette for a film and you're making everything, you have to consider color correction. You have to prepare your set to be color corrected. That is another thing. Very important to talk to your DPs and your gaffers. When you talk to the gaffer, very helpful because you know what kind of lights they're going to use. We were using, for example, a like adjustable, more cool toned LED coming from the outside. It was kind of like we were kind of like trying to fake a sunbeam. Funnily enough, we were shooting at night. And so I knew that we were using that LED. We were not going to use a tungsten, which is a more yellow, warm colored light. So that was not going to be infused through the light. I needed to create that warmth myself. And one of the ways was my wallpaper. It was a cream base. And then it had this like Baroque brocade pattern. So my wallpaper was like this cream base. And then it had this like pattern, this like really old looking weird French pattern in green. And over top of it, it had these like it was kind of as if it was scratched in this really greenish gold, which was perfect. It was really shitty peel and steak off of Amazon. That's what it was. A lot of it. Hundreds of dollars worth of it. But which wasn't a lot considering it's wallpaper. Wallpaper costs a fortune, in case anyone's wondering. Actual wallpaper costs a fortune. And it takes forever to install. So try to peel and stick your way through everything. That's my advice. That is my advice. You can make peel and stick look very good. You can. You just have to know how to work with it. And the way I worked with this one was it was way too shiny. So I had to dull it down a little bit. So what I did was I got some like Mod Podge. You dilute it in water just a little bit. And the matte Mod Podge specifically. Dilute it in water just a little bit. Cover all of the walls in it. All of it. 100% of the room. And then your walls are matte. And now that your walls are matte, you want to give it depth. You want to make it look old. You want to make it look damp. And to do that, you need to fake you need to fake aged corners and mold. And since they're drug dealers, smoke residue and dust and places in which the wallpaper faded because there was a painting over there, but now that painting is crooked because we just had a fight in there. So you have the shadow of where the painting used to be. And to do that, I just got a little cup of diluted black acrylic paint and a tiny brush, and I went around the room just dabbing. So like I said, our biggest benefit and the reason why the set looked so good was time. I had a lot of time to work on it. And my faithful assistant, Davis, he was there with me almost all of that time. We worked so many hours on that set. That is the secret for Deadman. We had a lot of time. That set looked beautiful because I had so much time to collect all the props, to hand select them, and put a lot of care into everything that we did. Every single piece there was thought out and had a reason to be there. Oh, how many bills are rolled up? Wait, are we using 50s, 20s, or hundreds for this? What kind of guys were these? Are they just gonna roll up any bill, or do they only roll up hundreds? You know, because that's a personality test.
No,
Um,
it looked
so yeah,
fantastic. Let me talk to you. So you were living in this place while this is all take. How long did it take you to build that set?
definitely over a month. Definitely over a month.
So were you ever just sitting there like watching TV, like what is this? What are we doing?
Yes, so many times. Bowen and I would just sometimes be sitting there and we're like, we're living in the set. We really are. And the more the set started to like put together, we started getting like so amped for the shoot because we are like, dude, we're living in the set, man. And it's really cool. It's looking really sick, you know? So yeah, we got to literally feel the set being built just every night that we were there. And then the day before shoot, when we had everything set up, we were like, all right, now we have to go sleep somewhere else. Bye. Because we couldn't, don't mess with the dress set. I couldn't sit on the couch, couldn't do anything. So the day of shoot, it was really complicated. Our apartment was not our apartment anymore. The bedroom was like storage. Behind the counter in the kitchen was, you know, like makeup. It was where I stored all my blood stuff. The blood is another very important reason of why the inside works the way that it works.
What was your
There's
blood
also that.
recipe for this one?
I mean, it's classic Tarantino's blood recipe. It's corn syrup, chocolate, and food coloring. But you have to do it. I also, the corn syrup I like using the transparent one. A lot of people use the darker one, and it helps with like having to use less chocolate. Personally, I prefer using the transparent one because sometimes I need my blood to be see-through. I don't want it yellow all the time depending on what I'm doing. So when we were doing the squibs, for example, we had a little bit of corn syrup in there you needed for the like viscosity of it. Um, but if you use the yellow, it was going to get too opaque. It wasn't going to show the bright red that I wanted. I would have to fix that in post. And I refused to do that. So I color graded my blood live every time that we were doing a shot. I was like, all right, what are we doing? Cool. This is the density of the blood that I need. This is the opacity of the blood that I need. This is how much red I need it to be. Because sometimes I need it darker. Sometimes I need it lighter. Depends on the skin tone of the actor. Because I want the blood to look the best. It doesn't have to be like real blood. Real blood doesn't act like that. But movie magic. I want my blood to pop. So I had to control all those variables as we went. The blood that is on the wall is not the same blood that's on the actor's face. They look the same, but they're not.
Yeah, Tegan does a great job with the blood, and there's still a lot of blood haters out there that are like, that's not realistic. And but we watched a lot of people bleeding out and a lot of flesh wounds, and I'll tell you what, our stuff is pretty realistic. Um, but that's always interesting to know on how you kind of did that stuff. Blood is very big because it is very difficult to color correct. You have to get it right. It has to look good. You have your varying options of realistic to stuff that looks really good on camera. So you got to, that is a creative choice that you have to do. So looking back on this one, what is something that you did really, really well about this set and you're really, really proud of it? And give me something where you're like, oh, I wish I would have done it that differently, or I could have done, done something a little bit better here.
Um, well, easily the wallpaper is my pride and joy. That entire the wallpaper is my pride and joy. It was the part that I worked the hardest on, and I felt really good about it because I went with it. I put my foot down on that one. It was a huge fight. It was a huge fight with Bowen. It really was a huge fight. he he's very passionate. He's very passionate, and I love that about him. That moment, our passions clashed very hard. um, but yeah, that the walls were literally my favorite part, just the walls. But the part that I could have done a lot better, if I'm being honest, was our breakaway table. I tried to wing that one, and I didn't account for practice falls. I had that table set to safely break and be put together 3 times, 4 if we're being gentle. We went 3 times during rehearsal. So I had to like figure it out, and I didn't have another one that I could like swap it with. I didn't have a hero prop. I had a breakaway that could be like reassembled enough to look like it was together. We had it supported underneath with pizza boxes. And then we had the crack on top covered with all the shit that was on the table. We picked the objects that was in the center of the table very specifically to not hurt the actor when he was falling. They had to fill everything, look realistic in a way how people would configure a table. But so you couldn't just have a lot of really soft things just in a straight line in the middle of the table. That's not how that works. That's not how people do things. That's another thing about production design. You have to marry what this actually looks like with what's functional. This has to be functional, but it has to look like it makes sense. It can't just be functional, and then we pray that the audience has fantastic suspension of disbelief. That's not how that works. So yeah, dressing that table, but not having a second for that breakaway prop, it really actually almost screwed us up on that fight scene. It almost did. So that was probably my biggest mistake with that set.
Yeah, I mean, when we ever have anything that we need to, as props or stuff that we have to break, we have 3 of them. And we work with Howard really closely to make sure we have a ton of stuff. We lose stuff all the time.
Yeah.
It gets lost. For Echoes of Evil, which is the movie that, we're editing right now, we had these metal scissors, and then we had scissors that were trimmed down. And we had 3 pairs of them, and we lost all 3. And
Yep.
I think we found one eventually. I can't remember if Howard had to come and give us an emergency props, but and we have prop masters. Like, we make sure the actors don't touch anything, but it's like you have so much stuff moving so quickly that you never know, so it's always have backups on backups on backups for a reason. But I mean, I thought you did a great job. It turned out absolutely fantastic. That's probably one of the better set designs I've ever seen on an indie film, honestly. I've watched a ton of stuff that's like mid-tier like range, like the $250 to $1 million, and that that set design could definitely compete with it. I was absolutely blown away. That's what I was like, how did you do this? I thought maybe that was just your house. That's how realistic it looked. Yeah, just tell you on that. But you guys did a great job. So we got about a couple more minutes here. I want to talk to you a little bit about color theory, because this is something that interests me. And when I do talk to people in film, there's certain things that they could bring up that I'm like, oh, okay, this person knows what the fuck they're talking about. Color theory is one of them, because not a lot of people study color theory. And this is the rabbit hole of me becoming a DP, and I always advise directors to learn how to be a DP. Number one, because it creates one channel of communication between you and your actor. You're not having to deal with another person. Your directing is going to get better through knowing DP, because you know what shots you can actually get and what you can actually do. And then if you're editing your movie, which you should be doing as well, you can edit in your head. This is why I don't do storyboards, because I have everything in my head. As long as the actors understand what we're doing, where the shot's coming from, everything that needs to happen, which we communicate to them, they're good to go. So when I'm going down this rabbit hole, you can have the nicest camera, you can have the nicest lens, but if what you're shooting is not appealing, you're gonna have a rough time. See this all the time with indie films. They're shooting like if you're shooting behind me right now, it's just a blank white wall. It looks terrible. It's flat. You want depth and you want color. And one thing that she's bringing up, which is color theory, is super important, because there's no reason to be not doing this. You should have a very good grade on your movie. I see indie movies that are very flat and they just don't look good. When people say, Brendan, why does this movie not look cinematic? There's 2 reasons. Number one, what you're shooting is boring and doesn't have any depth to it. And number two, your lenses. Make sure you're using like a 50 or above. You need that nice bokeh. You want the nice kind of Netflix look where everything's blurred except for the focal point of, where your eyes are going to go, which should be your actor. But there's a lot of room to just really work this and really manipulate it to get really good at this. And we've spent a lot of time on this stuff. And I'm excited because tomorrow we're actually getting our new camera. And now we're shooting with a whole new sensor. And we're shooting in 12K. But I have the ability to manipulate the colors a lot more than I could with the old Blackmagic. And God bless her, she's made 18 movies. We're going to put her to retirement. But how we operate is, I'm a fan of David Fincher. He operates in yellow, warm yellow, and teal. So it's blue. Colder scenes are a little bit blue. So if you've seen Panic Room, that was the color preference of Panic Room. Is teal, is darker, is colder. If you watch something like The Social Network, that was warm and that was glowing and that was gold. And you can see this in our movies. You watch Girl in Cabin 13, it's when the power goes out, it's blue. When, they're having a good time and everyone's happy, it's yellow. But you can manipulate fear with that as well. And so I think it's to study this stuff, because if you can get really good at it, the next step is bringing on, someone to come in and build these sets with objects and stuff in mind that work with that color palette. Or I will shift my color palette, because I always want to try new things, to what Mars says would work with her. So talk to me a little bit about color theory, your philosophy on that, and how you can really help an indie filmmaker really maximize their budget or their appearance of a budget. Because again, take that $25,000 and make it look like $1 million. That is the goal. Obviously, tell your story, number one. That is priority one. But once you have that story down, how do you make it look high budget? So talk to me a little about color theory and how indie filmmakers could get the most out of, what they have.
Color theory. Color theory is actually one of my favorite things in the world. And it is one of the first things that I tell anybody. You want to make your movie look better? Think about your colors. Your colors, they can affect you psychologically and thus somatically in your body. Like you were saying, it creates fear, or, like the green and the yellow thing, it creates disgust. There's a psychology as to why we feel this way. That's why the expression is you're feeling blue and not you're feeling pink. We associate colors with emotions, and we associate colors with places. And if you know where those associations go in a person's mind, in your general conscious of your audience, you will know where to direct your focus based on what you want to do, based on what you want to achieve. So my first tip is definitely read up on some color theory and color psychology. You don't really need to read a lot on it. 30 minutes of your time reading about color psychology and color theory will get you from here to here, in my opinion. And the colors that you have to understand, you need the triadics, and then you need your oppositions and your complementaries. That's all you need. Once you know that, and you know the basics of what each color evokes emotionally, you can tell a whole story just by the lighting in the room, the color of the walls, the clothes that a character is wearing. Another thing that I like to do is assign colors to characters. Each character has their own specific color that they are wearing at all times. Even if the audience can't see it, they're wearing it. Could be their socks. I don't care. They're wearing it. Because I feel like associating those characters with colors also helps us create a story in the background. So let's say we have two characters, and one of them is represented by pink and the other one by blue, right? And we want to say that the person who's represented by pink is thinking about the person represented by blue. So maybe we put her in her pinkness surrounded by blue, or just interacting with things that are blue. And the audience doesn't know that I assigned blue to that character specifically unless I show it very intentionally, which to create that effect, I don't have to show it intentionally. I don't need a close-up on the pocket square for you to know that this guy wears blue. You will know it. It'll be imprinted in your subconscious when you look at him. So that's another thing. Kind of color code your entire film. You know, this person's house is that color. This person's favorite color is this. I find that that helps a lot if you start getting the different parts of your story and you assign colors to them. You can tell a story just with that. And my other major tip is use those colors in your set design to tell a story. You need them there. The mood of the room is going to be defined by the colors that you have around it.
I think that's like, it's super important. And I think, like, again, like looking at it through the colors, like that is Wes Anderson, at his best. If you look at like Stanley Kubrick and how he does his stuff and how he builds his sets, because a lot of his sets were built, with color theory in mind. Shining was an example of one. Like that green bathroom was just so crazy and just looks so creepy. To have a set piece like that that's so iconic is just really, it's timeless. It's incredible that, they're able to do that. And it's all in the details. And I thought what she said, is really important, is contrast. The more I've been writing these movies, a bit more I've been working with these movies, a good story is just contrast. And you want to have your actors that are contrasting. You go into situations and rooms, you have different personalities, and the further you can get them apart, the better, because contrast creates tension, it creates excitement, gets the audience engaged. Well, it works with a lot of things too. And a lot of that is color. And if you're an indie filmmaker, go open Premiere, go open Resolve, and look at your luminetry, and it's a circle. And there's your yellow is directly opposite from blue. Red and green are the complete opposites. It's contrast. And you can do that because that'll make a more engaging image. You're really trying to avoid flat. And I mean, there's literally a dial called contrast that makes the image look good. But you have to help yourself out. And a lot of that is with, color correction and understanding that and having, a good frame of what you're trying to do before you get there. For all our scenes, for my own personal notes, I will make sure I know what, light we're going to be using and what color scheme we're going to be using, because I can adjust all our lights from, really, really cool to really, really warm, but you have to dial that in with the camera. And all that stuff should be done in pre-production. You should have an idea of what you're trying to do in there, because you can't tell a story through this stuff. And, we made a lot of found footage movies in a row. I wasn't so excited about them just because you don't get to play around with colors as much as you do. Now we're back to cinematic. I'm really excited because it just adds another arrow in your arsenal. And if you do it right, it works. We've had a lot of good success with that in a lot of our movies, especially horror movies. You get creepy atmosphere, you get low light conditions, you get that blue in there, you get the spooky, music going. It can create really good tension. So let's wrap it up here. But Mars, I want to ask you before you leave, if you can give some advice, because we have a lot of people who are probably interested in set design and production design, and making films on the indie level. If you can go back and talk to young Mars and give her a little bit of advice, what would you give yourself, and what would you give to any indie filmmakers or people who are looking to either get into this field or just make a movie or a short of their own?
Well, I mean, besides, the obvious advice that everyone's going to tell you, that is, make the movie, watch the movies, read the scripts. Besides all of that, which, I feel like if people are watching this, they are probably already doing that, right? So, learn about the world around these movies. What's happening there? History, art movements, musical movements. Learn what was happening in the world, in the historical context of these movies that you're trying to portray. Don't forget that your movie exists in the world. It exists in a timeline. It exists in history. And you have to pinpoint where that is. I feel like it's really important to just know this background of your story. It's going to orient your visual style deeply. Deeply. And it can be something that will take an audience out and they won't even know why. But it's just, the furniture is not right. It's from 3 decades in the future, and we're set here. It looks odd. So yeah, I feel like honestly, my biggest advice would be mind your history.
I like
Besides the obvious color stuff, history.
I like it. I like it. I think that's all great advice. So, we're gonna end here. I'm gonna put Mars's contact information in the show notes. If you're an indie filmmaker, she comes highly recommended. You can reach out to her. I'm sure Mars would love to help you out and help you amplify your budget, make your set look even more professional, and get you the really cool colors and the design that you deserve. So all her contact information is going to be in the show notes. Please check out Dead Men. It is absolutely awesome. It's probably one of the best shorts I've seen, and we've been to a whole bunch of festivals this year. You can see Mars's design in that movie. It was absolutely fantastic. Again, it looked super high budget. So Mars, I appreciate you being on. And guys, check out DBS stuff. We do have some good news possibly about getting the rest of our movies on YouTube. It's still getting these things back is been an undertaking for myself, but I know how much you guys love it. Girl on Cabin 13 is over 1 million views on our channel. We do have the House on Haunted Grounds coming out on January 1st, so please get ready for that one. We are looking for a launch team again, so please contact me if you want to be involved in that and get some sweet t-shirts and merch. Other than that, guys, thank you so much for listening. Until next time, see ya.